Live.
Hello.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 7 of our One Piece Going In Blind chats. I am joined, as always, by my wonderful co host, Laura from A Fantasy Awash.
Hello.
We did have a special guest planned. That was
We
Kyle
did.
from Red by Kyle. Unfortunately, he is ill. However, I do still have links to his channel below. So please
I will
support his
give
channel.
all of my opinions to Kyle. And whether or not Kyle actually would have agreed with those opinions is irrelevant. So, that is what is now going to happen. So, Kyle, I'm not sorry.
So, if for those who don't know, Laura and Kyle do little segments called Frenemies, where
We
they
do.
talk about books and they have some hot takes that they share with each other. So, something to check out. And again, I have links to both channels of my wonderful co-host and Kyle below. So we don't really have since we don't have a guest to talk about
Real.
their experience with One Piece. We're just going to
Yeah.
go right into our episode today, um, and we're going to just talk about the big character here, the big moment that one of our main characters finally got, and that was Nami.
It was Nami.
Um, yeah. So overall, Laura, what do you think of this? The we'll focus maybe on Nami herself in this episode before we tackle a lot of maybe some issues we had with this episode.
Okay. So,
Maybe start with her kid scenes. I'm thinking.
yes. I thought the kid actor was okay. So that for me was starting point number one, because this is now our fourth child actor that we've had. I guess fifth if you're counting her sister's child actor as well. I thought that it was fine. But I have major issues with some of these flashback scenes, like major issues. And speaking on behalf of Kyle, Kyle definitely had major issues with these scenes as well.
Uh, so yeah, I think the kid actor was. I thought it was actually pretty good. I thought this was a really good kid actor for Nami. There was the scene with the book where she took the book
The map
and her adopted mother asks why she took the book, and she goes, because I wanted it. And I think the way she presented that line was so adult Nami that I was like, okay, this girl's definitely like got kind of Nami as qualities to her already down. So, and we also kind of get an indication that Nami always kind of was always kind of a spitfire character.
Yeah.
She was always kind of, had that little bit of sarcasm and a little bit of snarkiness to her and a little bit of spunk. So,
See, I want to leave this comment up by T for a second. And sorry to cut you off, Chris.
But go for it.
This, I think, is because you're talking about a scene that I think relates strongly to this comment. This is truthful in the sense that the kid just says, I wanted it and I took it.
Mhm.
It's very, sympathetic in a sense that you see a kid she's an orphan, basically, even though she does have an adoptive mother. We don't know anything of her backstory beyond that, but she doesn't have a lot of money. She wants something for herself and she takes it. And I'm like, cool, I get that. Like, the motivation is very clear in that moment. The adult motivations for characters in this show, I think, is what T's comment is relating to and is very accurate, because I thought that was a major discrepancy point at parts of this episode where young child decisions make more sense than adult decisions by a lot. So that was what I wanted to say about that.
and T did confirm with you that it's the adult season, and I agree. I think we're not quite sure what, like, I still don't really. I mean, maybe you're not supposed to know what Garp's intentions are, or a lot of these other characters in general. I so these scenes a lot. There's a lot of I guess I didn't notice it. Can you give some examples
of the adults' motivations
adults?
not
Yep,
making sense.
that might be something
Yes,
we can coach.
the adoptive mother, like 100% could have lied to save her life for her two children. It made no sense. Her claiming that she would never deny these children being her children. I'm like, while that's sentimental and sweet, entirely moronic. Like, what are you doing? You tell them to stay out of sight, and then you announce to them, I have two kids. That to me took me so out of this episode that for me was really the turning point of the episode. I was like, this is
Hmm.
just stupid. Like, there was no other way for me to view it.
Yeah, I was looking at that, and the first indication to me is like, say you just had guests over.
Exactly. It
Just
could
say
be
that was.
so many
I think
options.
that was my first indication when that, because like you said, you tell your kids to hide, and then 2 seconds later, oh yeah, I have two kids in here.
I have two
And
kids. Like,
yeah.
what? No. You could, yeah, there was just so many different options that you could have given as an excuse, but you chose, like, you could have said, I had guests over, I'm a babysitter, I'm a caretaker. Like, it could be so many different things. No, I have
Mhm.
two children, but I've just paid you for myself, and now I'm going to offer myself as a sacrifice on behalf of my two children that I'm leaving motherless in a town that's being run over by pirates. What? Had major issues with this storyline.
Yeah. Yeah, there was. I definitely. I think the as much as well acted as the kid actors were in this, I do think the backstory to this was one of the weaker ones. I think just seeing and I guess Nami's just way of protecting herself and
Yeah.
just keeping herself safe, and maybe of course her sister, and we see this play out on why she joins what's his bucket here in this episode, which I think was my
Arlong?
biggest issue with this. Yeah, I think just so much Arlong in this episode that I was a little like, I wanted to get back to my characters, the characters we love and all that.
Yes.
Um,
Just to answer Omega Tech, they said that she was a former Marine. I don't recall them saying anything about her not being able to have children of her own. I don't know if it's supposed to be implied that if you're a female Marine, you're not allowed to have children, but that was not something that was conveyed. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back to the beginning here, there's a lot of scenes too in this one that I felt like they're coming out of nowhere. I think Zoro and Sanji are starting to have this like weird
Power ship dynamic. Yeah.
power ship dynamic or combatantness that I didn't notice when Sanji first joined. Particularly when it comes to Nami.
Mhm.
I guess it could be like we don't know the characters, and hey Ryan, we don't know the characters, so maybe
Yeah.
eventually there's some sort of love triangle going to happen eventually along with these three. I felt like Zoro particularly felt out of character because he was very like, oh, this, she's never coming back. I would think Zoro would have a better read on Nami than this, because Sanji is the one who read her correctly, that she's kind of being forced to do something's not right. And that's odd for a new character. You would think Sanji would have the feelings like, he doesn't know Nami, so but I guess he just has a better read of people than I guess Zoro did. And I felt like that was a little different for Zoro because he grew the relationship with Nami. He knows that she does have something going on in her life, and I would think, he would know that there is a reason why she's doing everything she's doing.
Sorry, Ryan. So I think that there's two parts to that. The vibe that I got was not so much love triangle. It was more that Zoro views her as a friend, whereas Sanji thinks possible love interest type thing. So that
Okay.
kind of creates
Okay.
a power shift
Yeah.
dynamic in that it almost felt more big brother protective-y for Zoro than it does for
No.
Sanji, who's like, this is a possible thing. Don't get in my way.
Right.
But I think too, now that we have a little bit more of the Nami background, there is more of a relatability factor between Sanji and Nami in that both kids are pretty much orphaned. They're taken
Right.
in by someone that's not their biological parent. And then they're kind of thrust into a world with pirates they don't necessarily understand at a very young age. So I think maybe he is implementing personal experience and kind of superimposing that onto Nami. But in that way, he also gets to read the situation correctly. I did laugh at a lot of their interactions where he's like, you know nothing about women. And it's like, I know everything about women. Like, I just like, as a woman, I'm sitting there going, neither of you know anything about women. It was so funny. But that was actually one of the things I liked in this episode because we have Luffy, right, who is our supposed captain, but he really took a back seat in this episode. And I
He
think
did.
that
Yeah.
partially was part of the problem in this episode because he was the driving force for wanting to go after Nami in last episode. And then he doesn't really offer a lot in this. Like he hears the story about Nami as a child and then joining Arlong's crew. And his response to that is to kind of go lament outside in silence. And he's not really communicative during this episode, where Luffy's personality, for the most part, seems that he is nonstop communicative and talkative. So it just felt like a very odd choice for his character in this moment. And then I felt that they were trying to fill that void a little bit with the Sanji and Zoro banter back and forth. And then you kind of just have Usopp who's there and is making weird commentary in the background. And I was like, it just feels off based on how we've gotten to know these characters over the last few episodes. And this is something that you and I talked about extensively with Wheel of Time, in that we felt that they used their episode and airtime so poorly to actually get to know particular characters. Like, we got to the end of season 2 not feeling like we really knew Matt very well. But in this show, I genuinely feel like, even though I have my critiques of the show, that they have done a very good job at actually allotting time to get to know the characters. So I think that's partially why this episode, when you see these types of things happen, you can be like, oh, that feels a little out of place for X, and maybe Y wouldn't have normally said that. So it felt not necessarily jarring. I feel like that's probably too strong of a word to attribute to this episode, but it just felt like it wasn't its normal cohesiveness that it has in the previous episode.
Mm-hmm. I sense that too, and I wanted to go and I wanted to touch on Luffy here first before we touch on adult Nami in this or present day Nami. The one scene I did like that Luffy had that was pretty strong was this rooftop scene, I think, with Zoro. And, getting that little, like you said, we get those moments that are more important to us than, whatever was happening in the scene, which I do agree. I feel like Luffy was severely lacking in this episode. And I think it showed. But it did help strengthen this rooftop scene, at least for me. I liked this whole very quiet moment. I like the way the camera kind of pans out on the two just sitting there.
Yeah.
And then we get the intimacy of the rooftop. I like where Luffy, Zoro once again puts his disdain on, Nami and, her current, leaving the party and abandoning us. And I love Luffy saying here, he's just very quiet in this whole episode and like very uncharacteristic in this entire episode, actually.
Yeah.
And he says, I'm tired of hearing about Nami from other people. And Zoro's like, she told you to leave. And then Luffy follows up with, so did you, leaving him on the cross. And it's just a melancholy Luffy in this episode. I feel like there is that little bit of optimism that he still has that, we're going to get her back, she's going to get back to the party. But I did find this being one of the strongest scenes, and it's like one of the few we get of Luffy. So
That
it is.
it's interesting you say that, because I feel like this episode, this whole episode felt a little disjointed for me, especially after last episode, which for me thus far has been my favorite episode.
That was my favorite too.
Yeah, the scenes that I liked the best in this episode were Zeff and Garp, because it's conversation, right? And this is always what it comes back to for me, is it's conversation. And there was minimal fighting in this episode compared to previous episodes. And that, if people know, that's a thing that I gripe on a little bit. And I really didn't have any of that this episode. It just felt that the conversations between the characters that needed to have those conversations weren't really there, or they were halfway there and they weren't fully there. So like when we get that scene on the roof, I was happy about it, because it really felt like the only true Luffy scene in the whole episode. And then I loved the scenes in Barati, because I was like, okay, we're getting some really interesting and nuanced background here to two particular characters. And I love the fact that Zeff was able to sniff out that Luffy is obviously a family member to this guy without him saying anything. And I thought that Zeff was going to get stabbed when he left that restaurant. I was like, oh, he's going to kill Zeff, and I'm going to be really upset.
I was worried. I was worried for Zeff too. I was really worried for Zeff too.
But I liked that, you know?
I had a big smile on my face for these scenes too. And Zeff's just become a big favorite of mine.
Yeah.
I love the conversation that these two have too. It's about, Zeff's really talking really about, our time is over. Our heydays are over. Let's leave it now to this newer generation. And that was like the theme of both times we had the cutscenes of their conversation. And I think Zeff even ends with here, it's their time now. You have to let them go. And then of course, Garp is not wanting to let that go. But
not even a little.
and then when the bartender ratted out Luffy, and they no longer needed Zeff. I was like, oh my god, please don't kill them. But,
oh my god, I know. I was so nervous. I was like, if they kill him, I'm done. I'm absolutely done. I was like, I will not watch the finale of this show. It's done forever. But I loved those scenes because first and foremost, you get to know a little bit more about each of them. Yes. And as you know, T, I love me some Mihawk. But I just thought that it was really interesting having two people with very opposing viewpoints sit down and have a respectful conversation. And it was over food, which I very much love, like food bringing people together. But I just admired this so much. And I feel like you see so much of Zeff in Sanji. And I love that so much, because I'm like, he is the next generation, but he still carries so much of what he learned from Zeff with him. And I love that. And we see that with Luffy, and that he carried, what Shanks taught him and altered him. And I wish that we had more of that Luffy spark, I guess, in this episode. It just felt a little bit lacking to me. And I think it was T that said he felt like they were building it up to something being at the end of the episode, which the end of the episode felt a little awkward to me with his reaction. I was just like, this doesn't seem like, none of this felt like Luffy to me. It just felt weird.
So the other part of Luffy, which was, grabbing onto Nami here at the end, stopping her from stabbing herself, and where she finally broke down, which when we get to adult Nami, and this was I felt really passionate for Nami here. I thought she did an amazing job with this particular moment, but the Luffy part did feel a little awkward, and I wasn't sure, where she says "help me," and I agree. I agree, Ryan. I want to learn more about Garp. I love Ryan.
Happy to help.
And then he goes, of course I will, and I like that. That was a strong thing, but then he kept screaming it. And then Nami covers her mouth, and I'm not sure if she's laughing or
I know. I couldn't
like,
tell that either. I was like,
and
what
that
is
was kind of
happening here?
and that was kind of my response to her. Is it supposed to be funny and goofy
Yeah,
because
like,
it's just
how
being
are we
like,
reacting to
over?
this?
Was she
Yeah,
crying?
that's the
She was
thing.
crying.
She was
Okay,
crying,
thanks.
but, like,
Thank you,
was
Omega
she
10.
overjoyed? And
I figured she was crying, but then I thought maybe it's because Luffy was being Luffy and it kind of breaking her, trying to cheer her up a little bit or
right.
something.
Yeah, it just I don't know, the whole thing it totally makes sense, right? Luffy wanting to help her and like agreeing to help her. He's not
Mhm.
someone Luffy's that person that you say to them, there's a 1 in a million chance, and he goes, excellent, like,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
goes for it. Whereas most people would be like, those are staggering odds. We would never proceed with that. He goes, that's fine. So the end of the episode makes sense in that regard that he's like, yeah, whatever you need, we're here to help you. But simultaneously, I'm like, you all should just be leaving. Like, get out of there as fast as possible. This is not safe. Yeah, I mean, I love that she was
Okay.
breaking her outer wall. I think we got to talk about adult Nami now because there's
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot
Absolutely.
to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. For the most part, man, uh, where to begin on this? All right, she goes back. And she, gets tribute from her hometown village. Then we get,
Mhm.
we get that little bit of the flashback of
Yeah,
her giving the book back to that same uh,
the
soldier
Scarface.
guy.
Yeah,
Yeah, and uh, man, it was just interesting to me here. Um, how long they strung us along with what's going on with Nami, and what did you think? What do you think of these scenes? Did you with her interactions with Arlong, which for me was kind of like the low point a little bit for me. I felt
yeah,
like Arlong was too much screen time for me
yes.
personally.
So I have a couple issues with this. First and foremost, if you want to set up this massive rivalry between the fishmen and humans, fine, do it. But I don't feel like there's been enough background given for there to be like this level of animosity. Obviously, we can assume as humans, okay, there's been racism that's happened in this world as racism is prevalent in every society. But I wish that we had a little bit more backstory to that to justify where Arlong's perspective is coming from, because then also it really amps up the fact that, like, yeah, Nami screwed over her sister and is doing that, but like it would also explain why the other people might feel so betrayed by Nami. I don't know. Like, I just had a lot of issues with this storyline in this episode. It stems from the fact that I thought that the mother gave a really terrible excuse, and that kind of took me out of the episode. And then it just kind of felt like Zorro with him being an adult versus his kid ideology. It's like you have to move past certain things and accept things for what they are. Like, you're not currently the greatest swordsman on earth. It's probably not wise for you to challenge Mihawk. With Nami, I'm looking at it going, this guy killed your mother in front of you, and you're thinking he's going to honor his word as an adult that's been around pirates for how many years. So I'm happy that that is a thing because I want to know more about it, Omega Tech. But I just wanted there to be less naivety in Nami. Like, she normally comes across as the more on point person, and that felt like it was completely lacking in this episode. I was like, where's your common sense, girl? Like, get some common sense.
Yeah, there's the one scene that was interesting to me was one of the earlier ones, and it was Nami playing poker,
Yeah.
and the guy thinks she's cheating, and she goes, we don't lie about money on this crew," and
Mm-hmm.
then she walks away with the extra
Yeah,
queens
with
in
these
her
fake cards.
pocket, but she didn't lie about the
She
money.
lied about
She
money.
just
She lied
lied
about her
about her
cards.
hand. She just lied about her hand. So it's like a typical Nami thing
Yeah.
here, and it's just she's very quick about how to maneuver, and And then we get a lot of like other things here too. We have Arlong saying, "You will have a place in my empire." So I mean, clearly, and then of course we find out why Nami is doing all this jobs for Arlong. But before we knew that, we think she's just trying to earn her way. And she says, "You will have a place in my empire." And she's like, or he says, "You will have a place in my empire." And Nami goes, and her response was, "I better." Kind of thing. And my cat is ruining my Legos on top of you can't see it, but I hear a bunch of stuff breaking up there. So
yeah. I don't know. I was so geared up all season. If people know, I've been talking about it for weeks. Like, I really wanted all of the Nami background story, and I just felt slightly let down by the storyline. I didn't love it. I wish it would have been a little bit more fleshed out, a little bit more developed, and she would have been maybe a bit less naive. That for me was the big thing. So yeah, I mean, I get this. I get that she's a kid that is desperately trying to help. And from kid perspective, makes perfect sense. Like 10 out of 10 makes sense. But when you're an adult that's been with pirates now for how many years, and specifically you've been with this one singular pirate, I think you should know better. Like, that's just what it comes down to for me, is I think you should know better. Bestie, probably your favorite. It's your fault, definitely, for saying it's your favorite.
And when you're in doubt, just blame T.
How dare you?
Now, the other scene I kind of liked was adult Nujinko, where she comes at the boys when they go to her house, when they figure out she's got something going on with Nami, and I just love some of the lines. I was kind of laughing a little bit. One of her lines was, "My sister doesn't have any friends. The sooner you realize that, the better."
Yeah.
And then they're still defending her, and she's like, "Boy, did she do a number on you guys?" So,
yeah.
I love her reaction too, because she's very cold. But I do love how she warmed up to Sanji, especially his cooking, and I thought that was a cool little touch there.
I love that so much, because I don't think we place enough value on what a good meal can do for people. Like, I really just, so much of our memory and emotion is tied to food. And, when you think about a loved one that's passed or things like that, they're almost like intrinsically linked, right? It's like there's memories, there's food, and then there's love. And I love that Sanji uses that as a bridge with people. Like, it's one of my favorite things, if not my favorite thing about this show, that he's just always cooking for people. And then people are like, here's all the information you need to know. So I loved that. And
he's definitely like this charismatic flirt,
Very.
And, you laid on, Yacker does really well with his little smiles. And
he's so good.
Yeah. And
he's so good.
He essentially did get Nujinko to warm up to the crew at that point. It probably wouldn't have happened if Sanji wasn't in the group.
Yes, Dom. Sanji is 100% my favorite. It was Zoro until Sanji showed up, and now Sanji is supplanted him.
I'm still toss up, honestly. I like the silent swordsman kind of thing. I think they're always kind of cool. But
anyone
Sanji but yeah. I mean,
me,
I'll take a good meal over,
yeah, over silently brooding good food. 100%. Yeah.
And then we go to our friend, your favorite character in the whole show, Coby.
Okay. I wrote Chris while I was watching the episode because Coby was annoying me so bad. There was one line in particular, I didn't write it down. I'm paraphrasing it, but he basically implies that doing the same thing over and over again is moronic. I was like, you just described yourself. Like, it was so frustrating. I was like, this is so ridiculous. But
I wrote the line down, Laura.
Did you?
It says if we keep making the same mistakes, nothing is going to change.
Exactly. I was like, this is literally Coby every episode, every singular episode. But I really liked Helmeppo in this scene and really appreciated that. I mean, if I have to suffer through Coby to get Helmeppo, I'll deal with it because he's so good. Yes, things will never change because Coby never changes. And that's what it comes down to.
Omega called you out, Laura.
I'm fine with it because until we start to get development with Coby, it's just going to be what it's going to be. But I thought Helmeppo was so good. He was one of the highlights for me this episode. I thought he's also, they're making him smarter now than he initially came off, which I really appreciate. Like, it was funny in the first episode that he was kind of just this dolt son, but you've seen now that he's actually been quite observant and has kept that information to himself and is now starting to share snippets of that with Coby. And I like that. So I hope we get more of that Helmeppo going forward if Coby is going to be the same forever and insufferable.
Yeah, so I guess my question to you was was Helmeppo just sort of purposely getting Coby drunk here to get information, or do you think it was just he's trying to reach out, he's trying to be like a comrade in arms?
Yeah,
kind of thing.
I think he was kind of implying that as a cover, but I feel we'll get to that. Because we're in talks with having someone on the show.
I'm gonna start this comment because we are gonna come back to this comment.
Yes. But I thought it was more of a cover and that he genuinely wants to be friends with Coby. Like, that's kind of what I was getting to or feeling. But I also kind of feel that he wants to help Coby because I think he realizes that he's super innocent and he doesn't really understand what's going on. And Coby still views being a Marine as this super honorable thing where there's a code and Marines don't do anything wrong. And as we saw in this episode, there are very corrupt Marines. And Helmeppo, I think, is a good bridge for Coby and reality. So I'm hoping that we get more life lessons with that and we go on. Guys, you're in the established character film. I know. 50 seasons. Yeah, right. We'll all be dead by then.
Hashtag forgive Coby.
If Coby wants to start doing something different, then maybe, Ryan. Maybe. What did you think, Chris?
Well, I mean, I think he's just starting to I'm getting used to Coby, where, I mean, by all means, I didn't find him particularly irritating in this episode. I just, he's just not my favorite character to follow. And like you said, with Coby, you get Helmeppo, who is funny, and I love his face when Garp is eating steak. It's just hilarious. They're just like staring at him eating steak, and there's just and Garp himself. I want to know more about Garp, and I hope we get more of him myself. So Coby is just kind of like that point of view character we have to ride in their head to get some of these other interesting characters. And yeah, I'm holding out. I am hoping out. I'm firm. We're getting comments about forgiving Coby, and Coby's he's got a story somewhere. We just
somewhere.
You and I because we're only basing this on TV show. We're not basing this on any other knowledge. We're not basing this on any other knowledge of Coby. So we're only basing it on these episodes. So we're hoping that we do see some change and some better growth for Coby. Absolutely.
Yep. Definitely.
Where are we here? We
all over the place.
Yeah. So we find out Nami and Nojinko, the graveyard site of their mother. This is where we finally full circle on why Nami is doing all the terrible things she is, and it's so she can buy the freedom of her village.
Yeah.
which probably came to the extent of many other villages.
Yeah.
But yeah, 10 million berry, and Nujinko's
100
like, why didn't you
million.
tell me? Why didn't you tell me? Which is always kind of my thing. It's like, um,
Hmm.
Nujinko comes off as very independent, she looks like she can handle herself clearly.
Yeah.
So this was always a question for me, and I think this is one of the things that always bothers me when people do these like misunderstanding type of scenarios to your loved ones.
Hmm.
And why didn't you tell me? And Nami says like, I couldn't lose you. And he's like, well,
You
how
already
would you have?
lost her.
Yeah, it's like, how would you have lost her? And it's like, would she have been killed? I think Nujinko shows that she's very capable, just as much as
Hmm.
Nami is, of
Yep.
taking care of herself. So I guess this to me, as strong as this scene was, I felt like the reasoning was just not clicking with me 100%. But I'm not a fan of these, miscommunicating kind of, alienate your friends in order to
Hmm.
try to do something kind of things.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just me. But how about you? What do you think of this graveyard scene?
Um, my big issue with it was the same thing. You say you don't want to lose somebody, but it's not like you've really had them in your life since this event happened, right? Because you've
Right.
alienated them and they think that what you're doing is absolutely heinous. So to me, it was no different. I was like, you've basically done what you didn't want to do. You just went about it in a different way. So yeah, it was just one of those things nuance wise. I was like, I think we missed the mark a little bit here. um,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that, yeah, I mean, that might have been a little
I
bit better,
agree. I agree. Yeah.
but I just feel the way it was delivered wasn't maybe the best way to go about it.
One of the scenes that I did really like, and this was a really good thing on the actress of Nami, was the scene of her losing the money. The work that she
I thought
did
she
to
did
put in
really
that
well.
money, and the way the camera angles and the music kind of like crescendoed onto this
Hmm.
moment really got the close-ups of her face and the absolute pure despair on her face. I actually got moved a little bit by it.
Yeah.
I think this was a really powerful thing in trying to crawl her way back up and stop them from taking all of
Right.
her, all of that work, all that money, and just you see just the pure despair in her face. and
Yep.
and then wow, I think that was, I thought it was one of the strongest little scenes we had in this entire show, honestly.
Oh yeah, and I mean, this just further proves, right, that the actors themselves are all really great. I think that they all do a really fantastic job. And Nami, I think, has had some really strong episodes. Um, okay, reasoning, she's a Marine.
Hmm.
Reason a fisherman pirate would be gone in a week. Any deception would maintain.
Hmm.
Interesting. Um,
Okay.
I wish that would have been conveyed better. But yeah, I thought that scene with Nami was a very powerful scene and that she really did a fantastic job. You just, like you said, you felt her despair in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, and then we pan out to the village in flames and us. Um, I gotta say, I liked a lot of the closed-in shots of the what the cameras were doing with uh, the faces. Even though of course I will, the whole thing with Luffy and him walking
Mhm.
away, she's still sitting there on the ground, and then they did kind of like the little. I kind of like the little panels they did of the.
I was actually wondering that too. I was like, oh, is that T's dad? Yeah.
But I like the panel. They did the little panels of all three boys, answering Luffy's call. I thought that was kind
Yeah.
of a cool little nod to probably what the
Manga.
manga is like and all that. So they're doing a lot of different things here with more different things with camera and angles. A lot of close-up eye shots too, especially with Arlong, and I kind of, and that's a little bit here with Arlong. I don't know. I felt like there was the scene with the mouse marine thing. There's just a lot of scenes that just felt like we
didn't
want
add
slower moments.
anything.
We want
Yeah.
slow moments, but it didn't really add to them. And I think I was just getting a little more irritated than anything.
Yeah. Yeah, that was kind of how I felt. T here. Last week we were talking about how we need these emotional moments, and the show's had several for me. Yeah, I mean, there was some in this episode. I felt that there was more last episode personally with Zeff and Sanji. I just felt most connected to that storyline. I think in part 2, because I just didn't feel like we had enough time with Nami and her mother. Like it was so quick, and to me, it's one of those things that I really wish we would have had more time to kind of sit with and feel that loss for her, kind of how we did with Shanks and Luffy, that we had a few episodes and then Shanks leaves and then we can kind of, it's not that I'm not sympathetic, obviously, to Nami losing her mother. I just wish that we had a bit more time to marinate in that relationship and know it better. So, because it felt rushed. I think when I sit back and I think about it, the major thing for me is that that storyline just felt rushed, especially when you compare it to the stuff with Arlong, which a lot of screen time was given to this episode. And I can't remember who said it. I think it might have been Omega Tech or someone else or Ryan, that we're getting that fishman or fishmen and human storyline later, most likely. And they wanted to give Arlong a lot of screen time because of that. But I just wish that we would have had more time with Nami and her mother and maybe less time with Arlong.
Absolutely agree. I think we got those, the only brief moments I remember, like you got those like intimate moments with the mother was the scene where they're all laying on the ground in like the flower bed or something. And they're all like in a triangle, looking up, a lot of those. But most of the scenes were confrontational. The book, about being poor and eating tangerines my whole life, kind of thing, and then returning the book, and then the unfortunate thing with her mother just giving them up, kind of thing. I would have liked a little more build up, a little more of the strong family dynamic between these three women or girls, and just so we can get it. I'm glad we got the flashback scene at least of her being a Marine and finding the two girls initially. Otherwise, I would have been probably a little bit lost on these flashback scenes.
Yeah, for sure.
I forgot to mention there's one little annoyance that I had when the village was first attacked in the flashback scene by the pirates, and they flipped over the house. And you get to present day, like 10 years later, and the house is still upside down. I'm like,
still totally fine and upside down.
Nobody bothered to take the house down.
Nothing has happened to it. It's just upside down.
I just threw that out there because I threw that out there, and I was like, what the heck? That was just like
I agree. I thought the same thing. I was like, it doesn't even have like dirt on it or like grass growing on it or anything. It's just the same.
Yeah. But I mean, I did like last episode a little more, but there was so many strong emotional moments that I was invested in with adult Nami, and then the little interludes with Luffy and Zoro on the rooftop, Helmeppo scene with Coby, Zeff and Garp. I mean, there were little scenes you can pick up in this episode that were actually really powerful.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So we, as blind watchers, what do you think is going to be episode 8? Like, what do you think is going to be a wrap up? Are we going to have it pretty open ended at the end of the episode to where?
I think in part it's going to be, so it's kind of confusing, right? I feel like there's going to be an encounter with Garp and Luffy. I don't know if I think that'll be open ended, possibly. I feel like if the fishmen thing is going to be really big going forward, I wonder if Arlong will bite it next episode and someone will step up in his place. I don't know. I feel like it can't be that both storylines are unresolved, one of them has to have a resolution. Because if you just have too many non-endings, that could be a bit much to then carry you into another season. Because typically I feel like you try to resolve all but one, right? And then you can kind of carry that as your thread to your starting of your next season, then go from there. So I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of torn between which one will get resolved. I feel like Arlong is the minor character compared to Garp, who is more of a major character. So I feel like I'll be surprised if Garp is completely resolved and we move on from that next episode. How about you?
Yeah, I'm the same way. I think Garp is going to be open-ended. I think Arlong is kind of tied into Nami. So I feel like now that we know everything about that, I feel like now that they know about everything and that's come full circle, then Nami essentially has no more ties to Arlong. So I feel like that will be the end. I think of Arlong. Will he die? I don't know, but that story thread with her tied to Arlong and probably Cocoa Village, I think will be wrapped up at the end of the season.
I think so too.
And then the Marines will continue on. Obviously, I think Garp is going to be a big portion of One Piece the whole way through, kind of thing.
Well, Dad T's comment here makes me wonder if Arlong then is still alive. So maybe it's that there's just no resolution.
Yes, thank you. I agree. The Arlong sucks. I can't stand Arlong.
Okay, the Arlong story will be explained in the next episode. Okay, so yeah, I mean, my hope between the two is that I really like Garp because I think he's kind of absurdist, but in an enjoyable way. So I'm hoping we get more of him, Jace, in the next season, because that would be upsetting if it was just Coby and Helmeppo. I mean, I love Helmeppo, but I want there to be Garp too. I feel like
I don't think you have anything to worry about. I think Garp's in for the long.
Yeah, I think he'll be there for quite some time.
Absolutely.
He does have a cool voice. I will give him that, but I heard too much of it in this past episode was the issue.
And Arlong's not one of the warlords, right?
He is one of the warlords, yeah.
He is one of the warlords.
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure if Arlong. So maybe he'll... No, he's not.
No, I thought he said in this episode he was.
Is that no to me or... Okay.
Wait, Omega Tech. Who is he? I
no,
thought
Arlong.
in this episode he was a warlord.
Okay.
So that's interesting.
Right. Another fish.
Well, then we definitely get rid of him, and then it not be a huge issue.
That's what I was going to say. I'm sure there's going to be. I'm sure there's. Another thing I was thinking of is this backstory of the fishmen and humans, and I think there's going to be some sort of like eventual war going on between these two.
Yeah. I almost wonder if like Arlong's will be the flashback.
Yeah, the mouse marine. Yep. What's that?
I almost wonder because like each episode has kind of had a flashback character. If next episodes might be Garp or Arlong.
I would love a Garp backstory.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that could be really fun. Or if they do Arlong's next episode and maybe they started the season 2 premiere with Garp's backstory, might be kind of cool. But I hope that we get that at some point. Like, I don't really feel like I need Arlong's backstory. I could just see that happening next episode to kind of give some filler. But I feel like there's going to be a lot of fighting. So I'm praising myself for that. But I'm looking forward, hopefully, to a reunion between Garp and Luffy and maybe some deeper explanation. It doesn't have to be the whole thing because obviously this is something that's going to be fleshed out for a long time. But just something to kind of keep me going with that snippet, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Yeah. Awesome. So final wrap up on this episode. You gave 9, I believe. Was it 9 last
episode? Yeah,
no,
9.
Yeah. I was going to say 9 at last episode. What is your opinion on this episode?
It's like a 5.5 to a 6. It's low. I'm sorry, guys. If it was just the Zeff and Garp scenes, it would be a 9. I found that there were several moments for me. Anytime I feel like I have to pause and I feel that I've been taken out of the story, it's really hard for me to get reinvested. And I found that with the scene with her mother, it really lost me at that point. And there was too much Arlong stuff for me in this episode. But I do agree with you in that I loved Nami's acting. Like adult Nami, I thought did a great job. I enjoyed the banter between Zoro and Sanji. I loved, like I said, those scenes with Zeff and Garp. I've articulated in this discussion with you where I feel like the episode could have picked up a few points. It's probably a 6 rather than a 5.
Wow. Ooh.
So yeah, probably a 6.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna go with 8 for me, because I got a lot of those moments where I needed I just responded to really well, but there was things I did not respond to well. I do not like the alienating your friends to protect them or anything like that, even though they clearly don't need protection. Same with the reason why she didn't talk to Najinko. I don't understand the reasoning behind things. Those things, and it's not just this show that does it. It's a lot of shows that do that misunderstanding of something to protect something.
Sure.
I'm not a fan of that, trope, or if you want to call it whatever you want to call it, because it's just done too many times. I don't like the misunderstanding thing just for drama and conflict sake kind of thing. So, but still a lot of cool moments. I want to go back to Dom's comment about I love the practical effects. Camera angles were pretty cool. The really close-ups of Nami and that despair, particular that scene, just really, they did a really good job with showing that the fires of the village being on fire at the end, and I love the split panel shot between the boys.
Yeah, it was good.
I thought that was pretty cool. So they're doing a lot of different things, and I'm sure they're just going to continue to do so now that the show is done really well for the most part. And all right, guys. So that's a wrap on 7. I do want to get back to this comment here. Oh, did you bring it up? Okay. I did. So first off, we will be doing episode 8. That will be actually this Thursday. So it's a little bit of a shorter week. Yeah. And we will be having Tori from Tori Talks on here from 8. She, I think, is also kind of gone into the show blind without having to read the manga or seen any of the anime. So that's how we're going to wrap. However, going back to this comment, we're working on getting somebody who's pretty knowledgeable about One Piece for our season wrap up. Which is going to be our official last episode to this show for us. Season 1, So we are going to do like the episode 8 on Thursday, and then I think a week from the following Sunday we will have our entire season wrap up with somebody a little bit knowledgeable of that. So
maybe. Yeah. So hopefully. I mean, I love Alan, but he actually hasn't watched the live adaptation.
Yeah, hasn't watched.
For the wrap up, we're looking to get somebody. So as soon as I get a confirmation from them, we will let you guys know. But I'm excited to watch the finale and kind of get a consensus as to what the full season is like, and then maybe go and read some of the manga and prep for season 2. Maybe I'll like Coby. Who knows?
I have there's a video game of One Piece. And,
is there really?
And I had to look it up to make sure it didn't like spoil anything. And so apparently there are a lot more crew members to
show up.
Luffy's crew. So I imagine maybe we'll get some more crew members in season 2. But
it's a big ship.
yeah, we can discuss that when we get to wrap
Yeah.
up. But yeah, I'm
Sounds good.
excited to continue on for sure. If 8 ends on a high note, hopefully not
I
a
hope
Wheel of Time
so.
note. Not like
Hopefully,
Wheel of
it'll not be Wheel of Time because, oh my gosh, the worst. Like, if someone were to say to me, should I watch Wheel of Time? I'd be like, do you care about finales? Because if you do, absolutely not. So, yeah, no. It won't be hard to beat the Wheel of Time finales. It just won't.
So awesome. Thank you, everyone in the panel, for joining in our conversation.
Yes, thank you so much for your comments.
If you are watching the playback, feel free to leave a comment and let us know what you thought of our thoughts on the show.
Brian.
Otherwise, thank you for watching. And we will see you on Thursday.
Yes. See you Thursday. Thanks, everybody. Have a great
Bye,
day.
guys. Take care.